My formula is always, I want to help you build momentum first. Most people look for confidence to get started. Confidence is really overrated amongst people. So I'm always concerned about momentum because momentum begets confidence. And then confidence, when you put momentum and confidence together, it's this ultimate outcome that can be certainty. And when I have someone who is certain that they can make things happen, man, all bets are off with that person.
Hello, my loves. Welcome back to the Lavendaire Lifestyle Podcast. It's Eileen. Today, we have a very powerful and actionable episode on unlocking your full potential and transforming your life. So we're talking about the concept of creating a powerful alter ego that you can embody to effectively shift your identity, your mind, and your behavior for success. Our guest today is Todd Herman. Todd Herman has been a trusted advisor to elite performers in sports and business for over 2 decades, helping them achieve their most ambitious goals. As an author, entrepreneur, and performance advisor, Todd's work focuses on unlocking human potential through proven systems. His company, Herman Performance Systems, serves Olympic athletes, entrepreneurs, and leaders with award-winning programs like the 90-Day Year, a performance system for rapid business success. Todd is the author of The Alter Ego Effect, The Power of Secret Identities to Transform Your Life, a Wall Street Journal bestseller, and My Super Me, a children's book fostering confidence and courage. His expertise has been featured on The Today Show, PBS, and Inc. magazine. Hello, Todd. Welcome to the Lavendaire Lifestyle Podcast. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Well, apparently, based on our pre-production, this was 8-9 years in the making, Eileen. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, for our listeners, I took Todd's 90-Day Year course years ago. I don't remember, probably around 2016, but he's really influenced my goal-setting system, even the Artist of Life workbook, like this product that I've created. But anyway, Todd, let's hear about you, your journey. Tell us about how you came to be this like peak performance coach for elite athletes, entrepreneurs, and business leaders.
Even though coaching is very popular today as a career, I started in 1997, back when coaching was not an industry, and I got into it very accidentally. I'm not one of those entrepreneurial types who knew exactly what they were doing, and they started the thing. And I was volunteering at a high school, coaching some football players after I got done playing university football. And I had spent a good chunk of my teen years trying to master my own inner game because I was, let's just say I didn't do a good job of managing my emotions as an athlete or as a teenager. And I got into it after a coach had told me that, listen, like if you want to go and achieve the goals that you say that you want to achieve, and he was a great coach for me, you better start to learn to master yourself. And he gave me a book, and the book was actually a terrible book on like leadership, but there's one chapter and kind of tidbit around like mindset. And I had never really heard that word before. And this is late 80s, early 90s, not to date myself. So I kind of fell down this rabbit hole of mindset work and started to get very good at kind of coaching and mentoring other young kids. Parents started asking me if I could mentor their sons and daughters in sport. And that evolved into what became the Peak Athlete, which was this big sports performance coaching and training company that I ultimately sold to Real Madrid in 2014. Along the way, I built up lots of different coaching and training businesses. And I've basically just been rattling around between the 6 inches of people's ears for the last almost 30 years,
Wow.
Speaking on stages around the world, wrote my book, The Alter Ego Effect. And it's my favorite thing. I mean, I'm very blessed that I found what I did find very early on.
Yeah. So it started with coaching in sports. And then, of course, that trickles onto like every other area of life. I'm curious, what were the first, I guess, lessons that you were teaching, or were you learning as you go?
Oh, I still learn as I mean, there's still like, you're always trying to, my ultimate goal is to try to be the best coach that ever walked the planet. I'm never going to get that award, but that anchors my thinking. And so I am always in learning mode. I'm always in refinement mode. I'm always in optimizing mode. And I love meeting with people who are much, they're longer in the tooth, or I love learning from younger people because I need to grow our business and our audience as well. And there's people who know how to do these things. So I'm always learning, but absolutely, I was building as I grew. I think the one thing that I see today, I was fortunate in that coaching was not an industry back then. So you're kind of inventing a lot of things as you would go. So I had no expectations about how big you're supposed to be, because this is pre-internet, pre-social media, everyone telling you that you need to kind of like give off an image of perfection in some way. I would say it's probably very difficult I know it's difficult for people in that regard nowadays, but I did not make promises that I couldn't keep. I kept my promises small, meaning I only worked with athletes on their building mental and emotional thinking skills or emotional skills. I didn't do therapy with people. I didn't say that I can fix your entire life. Right. It was just that one thing. And it was that focus that really helped to build a lot of traction very quickly.
What are the first things that you do when you're working with someone new? Like, how do you lay down a foundation?
First thing is, I want to know where you're at right now. So, there's a famous phrase that Simon Sinek put out called starts with why. And as someone who actually coaches people on performance, it's not starts with why. It starts with where are you? You've got to get a map of the landscape. I want to know, where have you been? And when I say that, I mean, so if it's you, Eileen, I'm like, okay, well, like, where have you been? Like, what are some of the skills you've already built? Like, what's been your career looking like so far? Because I want to know what I'm working with. And because oftentimes what we do as human beings, we dismiss away a lot of those things. And we're like, yeah, but everyone's got that. Or you discount the contacts you already have, maybe in a certain market or a certain niche. I had 2 people that I knew could maybe book me to come in and do a little workshop on the mental game. My little talk was called the triune athlete, the mentally, emotionally, and physically tough athlete. That if you aligned all 3 of these things together, who knows what the capabilities are that can come out of someone. And that still holds true today. So something that I very much created out of thin air as an idea, I was right early on, frankly. So I want to know where you're at, where you've been. And then from there, I want to build traction to, well, what can you already use as skills to help you build? And I'm sure you're talking about like the business side of things, like
business or life, right?
Yeah. So let's build off of what you've already got as traction, because then we can build momentum. So my formula is always, I want to help you build momentum first. Most people look for confidence to get started. Confidence is really overrated amongst people. So I'm always concerned about momentum, because momentum begets confidence.
Yes.
And then confidence, when you put momentum and confidence together, it's this ultimate outcome that can be certainty. And when I have someone who is certain that they can make things happen, man, all bets are off with that person. Like if it's the athlete who's got momentum and confidence on the court and they're playing against Roger Federer, or insert the name of whoever the superstar is that's more highly ranked than them, there's an equalization that happens in performance. No longer does that person even have in their head that Roger Federer is stacked ranked again higher than them.
Yeah.
Because they have this certainty that they can compete. And, the Federers of the world or the superstars of the world, they don't like it when someone gets momentum and confidence.
Yeah. When you say momentum, does that come simply from taking action? Like, how do you build momentum?
Moving forward, small actions that you can control. So, when you take a look at, if we were to break down even like your day, there's certain things that you can set up that the weather outside can't control. Other people can't control. But if I stick to my process, it's going to topple a certain set of dominoes for me. And it's so easy for all of us to go to, well, I want this outcome. Like I want, 400 new followers today on Instagram, or insert name of whatever, or I want 200 new subscribers, or I want the perfect boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever. Yeah. But if you do this, and this, all I'm trying to do is increase probability.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to increase the probability. If I do this and do this, so if I wake up and I follow my morning routine, or I sit down and I write for 30 minutes that I say that I'm going to do, and you don't even need to publish it. I don't care where it goes, but if you just do those things, that's what I'm talking about when it comes to momentum.
Yeah, I love it. It's the actions where it's like, it makes it more probable for you to keep going and to keep moving forward, essentially.
Yeah. And that's a key word. I mean, I know it's not popular word, and it's not a word that's going to be probably on a title of most of the best-selling self-help books of all time. But if I can increase someone's probability that X is going to happen for them,
Yeah.
that is a huge, huge advantage.
Wow. Amazing. Before we go on, I want to take a moment to share today's sponsor, Cozy Earth. The most important space in your life is the one that nurtures you. Cozy Earth products are designed to transform your 5 to 9, the time that matters most, into the coziest sanctuary. Their bamboo sheets are incredibly soft, temperature regulating, and breathable, creating the perfect environment for restful sleep. And when you step out of the shower, their luxe bath sheets offer that luxurious spa-like experience, oversized, ultra-absorbent, and super soft. Luxury starts where you rest. Let Cozy Earth help you create a space that nurtures you and offers true relaxation. Plus, with a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty, you can rest easy knowing you're making the right choice. Luxury shouldn't be out of reach. Visit CozyEarth.com and use the code TLL for 40% off your new favorite cozy essentials. Luxury shouldn't be out of reach. Visit CozyEarth.com and use the code TLL for 40% off your new favorite cozy essentials. Sanctuary awaits at Cozy Earth. Let's talk about your book, Alter Ego Effect, because I figure a lot of your lessons and takeaways can be tied to that. So can you explain what is the concept of the alter ego and how can it help people achieve their goals?
So the alter ego it was coined in 44 BC by a very famous Roman statesman and philosopher, Cicero. And he said in a letter to a friend who was asking him for actually basically life advice, because here he was this big statesman in Rome, and he had all this wealth. And he asked him, hey, got any secrets of success? People were still asking stuff back then. It's no different than someone commenting on an Instagram post today. And so he put his thoughts down into a journal or a letter and sent it to him. And he talked about how he reinvented himself many, many times in the different aspirations that he was trying to move towards, whether it's politics or business, etc. And he talked about an alter ego. And so he was the one who coined the term. And its root meaning is the other I, or trusted friend within. So I'm sure, Eileen, you've talked about it on the podcast many times or in your YouTube videos and everywhere else about the importance of having great mentors and people and friends and peers around you that support you, encourage you, challenge you, right? And so all of that makes sense. It's yeah, of course we should have good people around us. And then I ask people, okay, but what about between the 6 inches of your ears where you live 24/7? Do you have a group of people or even one person who encourages you or who is set up as a model or a source of inspiration for something that you would like to adopt or bring into your world? And they go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Well, that's the alter ego. The alter ego, the other I or trusted friend within, is just simply an image or an idea that that you can move towards because you're trying to maybe adopt their mannerisms, their characteristics, something about them, a trait, an attribute, to help bring some other part of you out and into the world. I'll give you an example. So there's at the time of this recording, in a few weeks, CNN and HBO are coming out with a documentary series about Kobe Bryant's life. Okay. Kobe's famous for the Black Mamba. Well, I'm the one who built the Black Mamba with Kobe. Kobe was a client and I'm the one who built the Black Mamba. So that I think it's episode 2 is going to be about the journey of me building that Black Mamba with Kobe and what that looked like. So that Black Mamba was birthed out of a very difficult time that he was going through. And I tell people that sometimes we need to go through an ego death, that there is something that you're trying to pursue, but the ego or the self that you have right now just isn't built to go and pursue that anymore. So the alter ego is a great way of using your creative imagination to basically reinvent yourself so that you can go and pursue that thing more easily. And so that's why we built the Black Mamba. Kobe Bryant was going through a very, very difficult time in 2003, going through a trial and really a judgment in the public eye. And he was going through an experience of, he had always had this kind of innocent archetype that he played through because he was the young 18-year-old kid who came into the NBA. But, that perception of him wasn't going to be there anymore. So I told him, because he felt like he was losing his edge, I said, well, really, you're not losing your edge. You're going through an ego death. And we need to kill the old version and rebuild a new version of you. And that's where the Black Mamba came in, Or another example, kind of modern day one is this young girl, Ashley. She had this idea of wanting to be a singer, entertainer, pop star, rock star on stage. Just based on her background, she just couldn't see herself do it. So she invented someone who did, and it was Halsey. Mm-hmm. And you take a look at Halsey, it's just the shuffling around of letters in her name.
Yep.
And she has a great quote where she says, I just couldn't see Ashley do this, but Halsey could do it. Halsey could go out there. And so here you have someone who has this kernel of an idea or this inspiration of something that they want. But just the idea or the self-image they have of themselves kept on getting in the way. And so I'm just here to remind people of this is what we have as a capability as human beings. We can reinvent.
Yep.
We don't need to be the story and narrative of the past. We can reinvent. The alter ego and the method that I provide in the book is just a very, very structured method of how to go about doing that so that you recreate yourself in an image that you most want, that's driven by your desires, not driven by the fear of others or creating a separate self that you're going to feel like an imposter inside of or something like that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so powerful. And this is something, I mean, Beyonce does this. A lot of people are known to do this. When you have this alter ego, is it also, I know one part of it is your goal is to step into that person and embody the ego, but also is it something that you encourage them to like have a conversation in your mind as you and your alter ego? Like how does one work with the alter ego?
There's so many different ways to work with it.
Uh-huh.
Throughout the book, I talk about all the different tools that we can use at our disposal. So using objects, totems, artifacts, uniforms, like to create a deliberate ritual that we can step into this thing. So there's that. And then I talk about in the book, just the power of one of the great powers of it that I discovered over building thousands of alter egos and talking people through this is the power of now having almost like a controlled conversation now that we have in our minds. In the book, I talk about just this merry-go-round of self-talk that people have where they just go round and round in a circle, beating themselves up, and it just repeats itself. But all of a sudden, when we enter in another entity in our mind that we're in control of, the alter ego can kind of encourage you through the process. And we were talking just before we hit the record button about National Hockey League client that I was just on the phone with. And we're working through this concept. And he finally got it where he can beat himself up a little bit too much, but his alter ego is there to cheer and encourage him on. Like, you got this. So there's certain language that we use, speaking at ourselves in the third person, or in this case, if it was your alter ego, it's like, Eileen, what are you talking about? And now all of a sudden that's the voice of your alter ego, that highest, best version, whatever someone wants to say about it, saying to you is like, what are you talking about? Like, you're this, you're that, like, they're pulling you into the characteristics and the attributes that you most want.
Yeah.
And it's hard to argue back to that because you're the one who created it. Or it's the alter ego speaking back at the shadow, speaking back at the, what I call like the enemy or the villain within that's trying to pull you into, procrastination, avoidance, resistance, whatever those things are for you. It's like, get yourself to the corner. I got this. Our light, whatever you'd want to say, our light is a hell of a lot brighter than your shadow, the darkness. So get the fuck out of the way.
In a way, you've heard this concept in different ways in spirituality. There's like the highest self, the higher self. There's also, I talk about embodying your ideal self and this and that, but I think people still struggle with that internal battle of like, they will lose momentum, they'll fall into a hole. And so what advice do you have for people who feel like they know who they want to be, they have that alter ego self, but they still really struggle with embodying it and becoming it?
Yeah, because they're trying to attach on attributes and traits to what they still feel is a flawed version of themselves. Like, whether this is true or not, I don't care. Like, there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of amazing spiritual traditions that are out there, or self-help or leadership traditions that are out there. But the best testimonials I've gotten from other people that are, I'd say, very experienced in this space is you actually gave people a complete model and framework for them to operate through. And it's because most people don't have a very good sense of their own self model, the way that they view themselves. So I'm like, well, then stop viewing yourself. Stop trying to take action through this version of you and let's build a different version. Because the grass is greener on the other side always, right? So someone goes, well, of course, Eileen can build 2.5 million subscribers on YouTube. She got started here, and they make all these excuses as to why that's possible, right? But I can't do that. Like, I don't have her thing. I don't, you know what? She lives in Los Angeles. She probably had a lot of connections when she was there, you know, and she's got such a pretty setup in her background. I don't have a pretty, you know, office that I can step into and put my iPhone on. Like, lighting, I don't have the right lighting. Like, there's all these things. So whatever your source of inspiration is for your alter ego, it's just simply mapping towards what we do naturally in our own heads when it comes to putting other people up on pedestals. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to borrow that idea of that person, and I'm going to live through that. And then all of the other steps I have that I lay out in the book are just simply there to just dial up the probability that you're going to be able to do that consistently. So let's bring this back to an example, and I'll just use me. Going back to 1997, I was actually very, very good at building rapport with young people. I wasn't that far removed from them. I was like 21, 22 when I started, and I had just gotten done playing at a competitive and high level. But I looked like I was 12 years old. And the only way that I knew how to grow my little fledgling business was through speaking. I grew up in 4-H, which is like agricultural Boy Scouts, and a part of being in that club was you had to do a speech every year and compete. So I knew how to speak. Getting on stage didn't bother me. But I was very insecure about like how young I looked. And so I had these intentions at the end of my night that I was going to make phone calls to try and book a workshop or something. The next day would end and I didn't have it done. I didn't do it. And I'd beat myself up. Mm-hmm. And then just one day while actually watching an Oprah Winfrey episode, she had on a lady who used Oprah as her alter ego to help her get through a very hard time. And I was like, wait a second, I did the exact same thing when I played football. So why don't I just build a new alter ego for business? And so I did. And he was the composite of Superman, because I was lacking action. So I needed to be more decisive. I wanted confidence because I didn't feel like I was confident at the time. And I'm a huge fan of Benjamin Franklin. I mean, he's someone who reinvented his career so many times and was world class at it. So I mean, that's a level of confidence. So I wanted that. And then Joseph Campbell, who's the author of, you know, The Hero's Journey, The Power of Myth. He created the Hero's Journey model. I saw an interview with him in the late 80s, and he was just so articulate. And I felt like I wasn't very good at, you know, articulating what I did. So now I had the attributes. I wanted to be more decisive, confident, and articulate. And my sources of inspiration were Superman, Benjamin Franklin, and Joseph Campbell. And so those three became my model of what I wanted to move towards, be more like. And then I went to Lens Crafters, which was like a, you know, eyeglass store in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, where I lived at the time. And I went and bought a pair of non-prescription fake glasses. And I put on a pair of fake glasses, just like a Superman puts on his cape. Yeah. I was putting on the glasses. He became Clark Kent. I was becoming something bigger and better.
Did you give a new name for yourself though?
Super Richard.
Okay.
He was specifically hired. And that's just sort of the language that I gave was he was hired to be the advocate for Todd's stuff.
Okay.
Todd was getting in the way.
Wow.
It didn't change the fact that I had this dream. I had this aspiration of wanting to do kind of big things in the world. Didn't know what that was necessarily going to be, but I sure as hell wasn't taking the actions in order to do that. And Super Richard became the advocate for my stuff because I did believe in my capacity to coach people, but I didn't think I was good at selling and I wasn't good at promoting. But Super Richard was built to do that. And when I put on those glasses and I practiced it, I got in front of the mirror and I practiced being more decisive. I practiced being more confident. I practiced saying the things I needed to say. Todd would have a hard time saying those things on a phone call, trying to book something. Yeah. Super Richard, he could do it. Now, to tie this up in a bow, 6 months later, I just put my phone down back when you actually hung up phones. Hung up my phone and I looked down and I just booked 2 speaking gigs for myself. And I looked down and my glasses were sitting on the table. And I sat back and I'm like, oh my God, I became Super Richard.
Like you did that as Todd, but you became, yes.
And that's what happens is these attributes and traits that you most want, they just become a part of you now. They become natural. You become unconsciously competent with them. And then all of a sudden, because you can't help but the switch get flicked, you're like, holy shit.
Like, what else can I change? Yep.
What else can I go after? And what else have I been arguing about that? Oh, that's just the way that I am.
Yeah.
Because I had this thing in my head, like, oh no, promoting and, getting out there and being dynamic as a whatever, that's for other people. No, it's not. And so I just kind of encourage people that whatever it is that you're kind of seeing or perceiving in other people that you would really love to have, or what you just appreciate about them, that's a signal that you should probably pursue that attribute and trait, because it's only going to help you to become more of what you already are.
Yeah. I love that concept so much. It's so inspiring because it really, instead of seeing those things as weaknesses that will stay that way forever, you can literally shift anything about yourself with that mindset. You can choose an alter ego, choose a new identity that's good at that.
And if you just think about how we all evolve anyway, it's literally just the pattern of life. I mean, if anyone does a good job of reflecting back on 5-10 years ago, I'm hoping that the current version of you isn't the same.
Yeah.
But by the way, if it is, there's still an opportunity based on the fact that millions upon billions of other people have shifted and changed over time.
Absolutely.
It's just honoring the human experience. It's not being fake. It's not being an imposter. It's just honoring the way that life really does work.
Okay. So the first thing that also comes to my mind is, I think people understand how to do this, right? Give your alter ego a name, step into that person. But the reality of their life, say the people around them, obviously don't know their alter ego. They might hold you back to your old self, or they might doubt you. Or how do you deal with that resistance of things that might not flow with that new self of yours?
What if you did it anyway? And you did it despite the fact that the other people are doubting you? Because I sure as heck didn't have nothing but people around me that were encouraging me the entire way. Now it's very easy because, like you end up building a platform and people know who you work with, or you've built businesses and sold them and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of easy for people to kind of be around you that want to, or that are going to encourage. And whether it's selfish reasons that they're doing it, doesn't matter. It's pretty easy for me to have people around me now that are encouragers. But I had nothing but people who doubted me. In fact, when I started my business back in 1997, I had the head of psychology from a major university call me out of the blue and call me a fraud because I was out there calling myself a sports psychologist and I don't have a degree. And I said, I don't call myself a sports psychologist. I don't give myself a name. I do mental game and peak performance work with athletes. And just based on the fact that my history was working inside of sport and being inside of locker rooms, I was very, very quick-witted and good at comebacks. And so I just happened to say back to the person then when they were challenging me, I'm like, you're just jealous because I'm the one who's traveling around getting booked to go on stages and speak. And you wish you were the one who was out there doing that. And so bold. I kind of made it a bit of my mission to throw punches back at the world of psychology. That's actually one of the actual gifts that moment gave me was I was like, oh, I'm not scared of you. And you guys are just trying to protect something that isn't even yours anyway.
That's really wise. Yeah. Because it is tough. Even me, like as someone who loves to read a lot of books, but I didn't get a degree in psychology. I don't have a PhD or anything. Sometimes you're talking about topics and you feel like, oh, do I have the credibility to say this? But in the end, you just do it. But I think that taught me that I could be a lot more confident, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also too, it's like, I don't promise perfection in life. I don't make these promises that some people will have a tendency to do. Like even the alter ego, like, hey, I want everyone that's listening, buy the book, please. I want to try to get as many of my copies in people's hands as possible. But do I think everyone needs an alter ego? No, I don't. I don't think everyone needs an alter ego. I do think that the people who win in life are the ones who have the most valuable tools on their tool belt to help them navigate life. I know that you're a really big fan of like mindfulness and gratitude. It's a really great tool to have. Okay. Knowing how to shift your identity as you're achieving and trying to pursue your goals, boy, is that ever a powerful tool that you have. The alter ego method that I give people just simply is the tool to help go and make that happen, as opposed to just saying, what's my best self? That can work for some people, but I'm trying to give you a model and a framework that does work and map towards how the brain works.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you originally asked the question around doubt. How do you deal with that? I would say no matter what, you got to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be people doubting you. Doesn't matter how high you climb. Look at any of the stories of a celebrity who's getting it taken down right now. There's people who are doubting them.
Yeah.
And yet you do it anyway. It's not a popular thing to say, but it is reality. We do it anyway. Think about like the little seed that's in the ground. And if it sat there and just simply lamented the fact that it had to push up through all that dirt in order to get to the sunlight, I mean, we wouldn't have anything growing. But it's that bursting through part. That's where all the value sits in the intestinal fortitude that you get, the resiliency that you earn, the grit that you earn, the new story that you tell yourself, the narrative that you tell yourself about, what you can overcome and who you can overcome sometimes as well in order to get to the first phase of growth.
Yeah. So for listeners who want to work on building this alter ego, I guess, what are the first things that they can do today at home to like practices, actual things that they can start doing to build this into their mind?
Step one, we don't build an alter ego for our entire life or our entire self because there is no one self.
Right.
We have many roles that we play in life. There's context that we have. So I would just say, start with a role or an area of your life where you have the most resistance in. So it could be you're not pursuing things the way that you want to, or you're most challenged by right now. That could be being an entrepreneur. That could be being, a promoter of your business or your stuff, or a creator, like whatever the thing is. It could be mom, could be dad, whatever. So that's one. Let's pick one role. And then what is it about the way that you're currently showing up that you just don't like? So I'm procrastinating. I'm avoiding things. I'm not consistent. I don't discipline, or I'm not having fun with it. I'm not being creative enough with it. What are those things? That's all you have to do. We're not going deep. We're not going to try to build a list of things just to beat you up. But just kind of, most people know top of mind what those things are. Great. Now let's flip that. Well, then what are the attributes and traits you'd like to have? Just like I was talking about before about how I was not taking action. Right. So I needed to be decisive then, take more action. I was insecure. So I needed security or confidence then. And then I was sort of verbal vomit salad of just words that came out. I didn't articulate what I did well. So I wanted to be like Joseph Campbell. I wanted to be more articulate. So now those are the traits. Well, then the next part of that is who embodies them already? Is there anyone that you know that already has those things? Could be one person. Doesn't have to be a person. Could be an animal. Kobe Bryant, the Black Mamba. Could be just an idea. Beyonce had Sasha Fierce. That was something that she just invented. Name mixed with adjective, verb, whatever. In the book, I have like all these different templates for how you can name things. And that's the really fun part. So already, what am I doing? I'm leveraging the one thing that you and I have that nothing else on the planet can compete with. Our creative imagination. It is resistance cannot beat the creative imagination. We can talk about discipline. We can talk about stick-to-itiveness. Our superpower is our creative imagination. Our ability to reinvent new ideas and come up with really creative solutions to things. So I'm already honoring that by giving things names and being kind of more playful with this whole process. So what are the traits? Who or what might have it already? Could be a lion. Could be a donkey, which happens to be my favorite animal. Mm-hmm. And then we move to, all right, now what is a ritual that I can do to help bring these traits out of me? That's why I talk about the importance of having a totem, an artifact, or a uniform, something that you can wear or have with you, or it could be a place. I've got people who've built alter egos that live in the chair because they're writers or they're creators in some way. And that alter ego lives in the chair, and they stop before they sit down in their chair and they see that idealized model of how they'd want to be. And they start to now there's a bridging between the chair and where they're standing. And there's this little bridge of energy that starts to pull them into it. And when they sit down, it's commitment. You are that thing. Wow. Then when you're in that moment, and by the way, do you need to be it for 18 hours a day? No. just momentum. If you can do it for 18 seconds, you know what you can do? 30. 30 can become a minute. A minute can become 2 phone calls with people to book speaking gigs. You just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people can become it immediately. I've seen people shift in the now because all of a sudden the idea just resonated and it just unlocked, and they just sort of let go of this former sense of what they thought they needed to be, and they became the new thing.
Yeah.
Again, it honors the idea that we can practice ourselves into anything. So again, that's that ritual. We can practice that. So
Yeah, that's amazing.
What does feeling like, you're a really good model in this case, Eileen, because you sort of embody, or you try and deliver that as much as possible, this kind of calm centeredness, the tone of your voice, right? So if someone's out there and they feel like they're just too loud, or they're just too, they're just angry with life, you can practice a voice of calm.
Mm-hmm.
And then you narrate your life. It's like, when I wake up, I grab my glass of water and I take a sip. And then I go into the bathroom and I brush my teeth. You can narrate, like, voice is a very, very powerful trigger.
You're saying voicing that character, that alter ego out loud.
Yeah. Well, narrating that model of how you're going to show up. Because again, it goes back to what I care about more is, what are the attributes that you're trying to be leading through with this alter ego?
Yeah.
Because that's what's actually at our core. This is the way that I frame it, is there's no self that's there with me. What's at my core is, if the universe is made up of energy, then really we're made of energy. How human beings translate this energy into reality is through actions, attributes, traits, behaviors. So what if at the core of us was just this big pool and soup of traits and attributes? And the point of the alter ego, or the model of us, is to kind of dig in, pull out these traits and go, hey, as a dad, for me, my source of inspiration for how I want to show up is Mr. Rogers and my own dad. Because here I am. I had before my first daughter came along, I had almost 20 years of working with some very big personalities with very strong egos, right? Like big sports stars, CEOs, leaders around the world. So a part of the avatar, or the self that came into that role of coach and mentor, was being a challenger. Very much a challenger coach. That's the way that I kind of operate. So you think about that. 17 years, you're doing that. You're flexing that muscle every day for 8, 12, 15, 16 hours. I worked long hours, but I loved what I did. So whatever. I could start to believe that that's who I am. Oh, I'm a challenger.
Right. And then now that you have the dad role, you have to shift that.
I did.
Yeah.
Because if anyone has kids, that being a challenger, a lot of times you're just butting heads with your kids because they can be pretty stubborn. So, okay, well, now Mr. Rogers, no one would ever describe him as a challenger personality type.
No.
No one described my dad that way either. He was a rancher, kind of, rough hands, soft heart. And so I started to rewatch Mr. Rogers episodes before Molly came along, my oldest daughter. And I'm watching and I'm just seeing his attributes. He comes in down the stairs, hangs up his jacket, puts on his red cardigan, goes and sits down on the couch, takes off his outside shoes, deliberately puts on his, blue sneakers. And anytime he was talking to one of the kids on the show, he would always get down on his knee because he wanted to get eye level with them. And he would always soften his shoulders. If you ever watch, he would never, when you think about confidence, it's always like chest out, shoulders back, head up. He didn't do that with kids because what's that doing? That's dominating.
Yeah.
So he would soften his shoulders. So and people can't see, but I'm like, I could bring my hands forward and I'd get down on my one knee and lean forward and like, hey, I get it. You're angry right now. You lower your voice. I practice that. And so does that mean I'm perfect with my kids? Oh, of course not. Does that mean that I raise my voice sometimes? Of course it does. But if that makes me 25% better, that's a big difference to little kids.
Yeah, no, this is so powerful. And going back, there was one thing you said that it really resonated with me, is just as a human being, if you are energy and you just think of we are just a pool of potential, a potential energy, potential emotions, behaviors, attributes.
Yes.
It's just like, just pull out what you want to pull out. You don't have to identify with one thing. I am not just this one thing. I can be so much more if you just open it up that way.
Yeah. If you just perceive yourself as like, hey, like if there was just this blue ball of like globulous energy that's sitting somewhere in our gut area.
Yeah.
And really what it's made up is like these words of like creative, confident, bold, articulate, brave, courageous. Like they're just, but we just don't reach in with like the current sense of who I am and grab them. We just sort of all collapse into an identity every morning and we act the same way. And all I'm encouraging people to do is like, what if we lay down a new track and we just practice that new track? Eventually you won't need to practice it anymore because it'll just be the way you are.
Yeah. And the fact that you can apply this to different roles in your life, right? As a business owner, I'm this way. As a mom, right. I'm this way. You get to choose.
Yeah. In preparation for this and, watching, a lot of your stuff, I kind of caught myself. I was just sitting here and I was just sort of like leaning on my desk here like I am right now. And I was just like, very relaxed, right? So that's a calm energy.
Yeah.
You're thinking about that. Like you shot that from where you're at and that energy found its way through all the different pipes and satellites down and it changed the way that I felt calmer.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That people can do that. And you're no different. And whoever's listening is no different than what you and I can be doing right now if it's resonating with someone.
Oh, totally. And I have to let everyone know I am not calm all the time, right? I'm generally—
Don't burst that bubble. Don't burst the bubble.
Right? I'm generally a pretty chill person. And yes, I lean towards that. But Lavendaire is a brand. Again, you can call it an alter ego, but it is a brand that I created where I intentionally wanted to show up as this gentle, compassionate, like, let's get into talk about the heart. I don't know. I had a vision. I'm more of a visual person. And I know how to create a vibe, right? With the colors and the sounds. Yeah. To me, I call it branding, but in the same way, you can brand yourself. It's similar. It's very similar.
The concepts, the principles are very much aligned. I'm just trying to give it to people as a useful tool to help transform how they see themselves.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that you're very practical. It's step by step. You just give so many tools. There is one other thing I want to talk to you about is your 90-day year program, because it's been so helpful for me to just be able to frame life in that way instead of planning like your New Year goals or I don't know. Can you give an overview of what the system is and how it can help people?
It came out of this. I was working with a baseball player. This goes very early on. And by the way, it's going to come back to like the entrepreneurial person that's here, but this is just where it was birthed. So baseball is a very long season. And when we were kind of looking at this person's career over a year, they always slumped in the middle. And because baseball is longer, he always started well and then finished strong. So I was like, well, let's just divide this up. Why don't we just have 2 seasons in a year? And all of a sudden, performance changed. So anytime these ideas would catch on, I'm like, okay, well, now I got to figure out why is this working so well?
Yeah.
And so I start to look into it. Well, turns out that there's been a lot of studies around the idea of goals, projects, tasks that people are working on. And 90 days is about the horizon line to the motivational factor in human beings. The moment that you start to have a goal or a project that goes beyond 90 days, it creates procrastination and avoidant behavior. And then people all of a sudden cram at the end. So it started out with being 90-day sprint. And then it evolved into the name 90-day year. And my clients, who then went from being just athletes to then I'm working with entrepreneurs and leaders, the people who implemented the 90-day year would be achieving far more and staying a lot more focused on less things. So it's the combination of they're achieving more because they're closing a feedback loop more quickly. And they're also focused on less. Because what I would do with an athlete is I'm like, what's the one skill that if we worked on it over the course of the next 90 days would make all of the other skills improve or biggest impact? And so that's what happened. And then, so the same thing with an owner, entrepreneur, creator. I don't care what the name is. if you had one goal that you could achieve, you have one thing that you're going to focus on for the next 90 days, and every action, every project that you did aligned with that one goal, you have no idea how much impact that's going to make. And so inside of the actual system, I talk about, how to maybe not everything that you do can align to that one goal, but we were trying to at least do 80-20. 80% of your stuff should align with that one goal. And it could be like growing audience for your podcast or getting sales in your business. Like that's my only goal, getting sales. Just to the person who's listening, like if let's say that was your goal and you only focused on activities that helped you get sales, of all the stuff that you've been trying to do the last week, 2 weeks, a month, what would be cut out off of your calendar? What would you not be doing because you just focused on this? You'd be like, okay, well, I wouldn't be trying to redesign my website because I really don't need it. I could use a Google document to send people to. Like there's all these assumptions that we make about things that we should be doing, need to be doing. So 90 Year is like a peak performance, high productivity system for basically people who are ambitious.
It definitely works to like be able to focus so much. But like one struggle, I'm still a person that wants to do a lot and I tend to have a lot on my plate. And sometimes when I feel like you focus a lot on here, a lot of other areas kind of get left behind and forgotten. I'm curious, what advice do you have for that? And how do you manage it? How do your clients manage something like that?
That's about recognizing what needs to be maintained and what needs to grow.
Okay.
So a couple of years ago, I had a private client, or not a private, she's in a mentoring group of mine. And she had just come through a season of like just a lot of stress and strain for her business, for her team. And so I said, for 2023, you can't there's no new projects. Nothing. We're just going to optimize what you've already done. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to maintain things. And now I know that what often happens is when people go back and start optimizing and maintaining the things that they've already built, they're going to grow.
Yeah.
And she had her biggest year yet. And she's like, how is it even possible? I didn't even set any big goals. And I'm like, because you already built the things that your business kind of needs.
Yeah.
You just went back and optimized. Instead of you building out 16 more lead magnets, you went back to the ones that you'd already built and you optimized. You made the page a little bit better, and it took away a lot of bloat in the business. So I would just say, like, for someone who's like, you're very focused on this one thing over here. So like maybe right now you're like, I really want to scale up the podcast. I really want to grow its, reach and audience. Then I would say, okay, so now of the things you already have that you want to keep, let's just maintain them. Let's make sure that whatever routines are in place in order to feed the YouTube channel, just let's make sure that those habits, those routines, those whatever, the processes,
right,
just continue to be managed.
It makes sense. Yeah. To know exactly what is just being managed, and don't, you're not trying to do too much in every project. You pick one that you really want to hone in on and grow. But
the crazy thing about it though, and it actually maps towards kind of physics where, a body in motion tends to stay in motion. Mm-hmm. So when you get into like a management mindset or a maintaining mindset or an optimizing mindset, I'm always like, hey, don't be shocked if that snowball really grows for you and builds more momentum, and you're not even putting a lot of energy into it.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I'm overdue for those reduce the bloat type of years that you just talked about with your client.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Something else I wanted to ask you about is the balance of compassion and toughness, because when I hear peak performance, I think, oh, you might have to be tough on yourself. It's about showing up. And sometimes it's hard, right? Sometimes, I don't know, because some people talk about being gentle with yourself. There's definitely a balance of pushing yourself enough. Not too hard, not too little. What is your take on that?
The one thing that I try to use as a principle to kind of help filter these ideas through is nature, I think, is the ultimate teacher for us. So what exists in nature? So balance actually doesn't exist in nature, like as a thing. Things are either growing or they're decaying. It's one of those two things that's happening. Something isn't only good, meaning challenging yourself can't be only good. Well, how do I know that to be true? Well, because water isn't only good. I mean, we think of it like, how can water be bad? Well, if it's downpouring for multiple days on end, the soil can't soak it all up. So it's something can't only be good. So to your point of like this kind of dichotomy of like being good to yourself, and then, but can't also being good to yourself mean challenging yourself? Because the moment you stop challenging yourself, that means you're going to be withering away in some way, right? Because there's growth and it's decay. Carl Jung, who was the one who really first gave voice to the idea of archetypes, like there's the warrior archetype, there's the ruler archetype, the caregiver archetype, the magician archetype. There's 12 that he sort of outlined. I kind of like his, because it does help use a lot of his archetype stuff in the way that I would help build alter egos for people and whatnot. But he had made a statement once where he said, the most complete human is the person who can access all the different archetypes. Like you're not just one ruler archetype. You can also be a caregiver archetype, or you can be the innocent archetype. And so that's how I think about developing even my own self, is like, okay, what's an area of my life where I could experiment with a new way of being so that I can draw on some new attributes and traits. And what I found, even in the use of Mr. Rogers, there was all of a sudden a new tonality that I'd use in my coaching.
Okay.
I wasn't just the challenger archetype. There was a patience that I could all of a sudden start to bring to my coaching as well, or my mentoring with people.
I see it. So in a way, you're exploring the different archetypes, different characters, and you're taking what's good from all of them, because there is some, right? There is good in all of them. And so if you're only experimenting with one, that you're limiting yourself.
Yeah. Like the ruler archetype is one. Just the word alone, people would maybe have a negative connotation with, but really a ruler archetype in its like pure form, in its maybe light form, is someone that wants to bring prosperity and stability to everybody. That's really what so that's why they want to put systems and frameworks in place, like the good king, the good queen, the good CEO is trying to bring prosperity and stability to everything and everyone. The shadow side of the ruler is when the shadow side starts to come up, is they become controlling and dominating and domineering. And that can be the same way with, the magician can be manipulative then.
Yeah.
Or the jester archetype could end up being in the shadow side of themselves, would be someone who's very like cutting, knows how to use sarcasm to really cut deep on someone. But when they're in their light form, they're bringing humor and levity to the situation.
Yeah.
So, it's just another framework to give to people who's like, oh, I never even thought about exploring some of these other things. Well, how do you explore it? You got to look for sources of inspiration. So if you're not someone who values humor that much, then consume things that are funny.
Yeah.
Right? Like start to develop that, and you can kind of start to see ways that you could bring it out.
Going back to your alter ego concept, how do you guide people to know what parts of them want to be changed? I know you were very aware, I need to be more decisive. I want to be more disciplined, this and this. Sometimes people don't even know what they need, right?
In some ways, pay attention to one, what you're desiring or jealous of in other people, because that can be the signal. Because what it is, it's a recognition that you think that you don't have that right now.
Right.
Okay. So that can be one thing.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I actually think that most people do know what it is that they want. They just don't want to admit it to themselves, because the admission to themselves would mean ultimately that, well, now there's no confusion that's left. Now there's no uncertainty that's left.
Well, it's also admitting your flaws and weaknesses, right?
That's one way to frame it, but I don't think so. Like, I think it's an incredible strength when you can actually be someone who can admit to yourself, no, this is what I want.
Yeah.
It's actually it's the title of my next book that I'm working on. The title is Unapologetic.
What is that book about?
It's not that they're in a negative way of saying like, hey, this is just who I am. No, unapologetic in you want what you want. That's it. Like, most people know what they want.
Yeah.
Allow that to come out. There's no, like, if you said to me, if I asked you the question, so what do you want for Lavendaire? And you told me, one of the worst questions I could ask you is why?
Oh.
Why demands that you need to explain to me with words and communicating, which can be very clumsy for people. what is the source of this energy that you want to bring into the world? It's like, all I'm looking for is that there's a conviction with a client. So like, hey, you don't explain to me why. I can see it.
Yeah.
Because some people don't have the words to articulate it. They just want what they want. And I'm like, all right, let's get after it. Let's go do it. Now let's put in place the things that we need to do in order to make the probability of that thing happen.
Thank you for sharing that. Like, unapologetic is you can want what you want and you don't have to know why or explain why. Cause I do understand sometimes if someone asks you why, you feel like, oh, then I have to, like, you have to prove that there's a good reason why, or it makes, in a split second, it makes you doubt yourself. In a split second, it makes you wonder, oh, do I really want that? Like, is it really important to me? So,
and isn't that a terrible experience to give to people?
Actually, yeah, you're right.
It isn't what we should be doing to someone. And when you think about, so there's a great study that was done on the relatedness between vocabulary and wealth. And what they found was the lower your access to words, so vocabulary, so the lower amount that you have, lower amount of words you have in your vocabulary, there's a direct correlation towards poverty. And when you think about it, it's because you just don't have the words to go out there and ask the world for what it is that you want, or to present yourself in a way that is going to be, whether it could be attractive to other people. So the more vocabulary you have, there is a direct correlation to income. Well, to take this to my point, sometimes we don't have the words to describe what it is this sense, this feeling that we might have about what it is that I want. But you don't need to have me know.
Yeah.
And then your job is to go out and try and realize that in the world in some way. And then you get to that place and you're like, this is what I want. This is what I wanted. Yeah, you don't need to explain. I mean, I'm not going to ask any of your viewers to ever explain why they need to, or why they want what they want. They just want it. And so what I'd give to people to make things practical is, if you're troubled by that sometimes, that people ask you, well, why do you want that? What people lack is typically a script, a reflex, a response to say back to those people. And it could just be like, you can be, oh, what is it? It's just what I want. And they go, but why do you want it? It's what I want. Like, because after a while, I think about taking on the alter ego of a 6-year-old. I've had 3 6-year-olds at one point in time, not at the same time.
Yeah.
But they will just stick to their guns. And I'm going to take on the alter ego of a 6-year-old saying, that's what I want.
I love that. And it works. It's helpful. It's useful.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So Todd, if you could leave our listeners with one final piece of advice or wisdom, what would that be?
I just encourage people to be a lot more playful with how they perceive themselves, and that you're not something that was already carved in stone and you're going to be that thing forever. Human beings are not trees. An acorn will always grow into an oak tree. We're not acorns. We can always morph and shift and shape and transform into, whatever it is that we're really desired to become.
Yeah, that's super inspiring. And I'm curious for you, who are you trying to shapeshift to becoming more like now?
Okay, so I've got a bunch of media that's upcoming because of this, documentary, and I am trying to adopt a little bit more of the attributes and traits of Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds in media interviews, because I like the way that they show up. They're, very familiar. They're very fun. And so, yeah, that's a little bit of what I'm trying to bring into the world now. We'll see how I do with it.
Okay. Good luck with that. So you just have to study and watch their tapes, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've already done it because I was on the Today Show, and I use that as a source of inspiration as well for how I showed up. And yeah, so I just sort of, look at their mannerisms, looking at their characteristics, and I go, yeah, I like the way that they show up. I like their body language that's there. And, I don't want to just come across as like this kind of scientific person that's going to be explaining the reasons why. Like, I want to be more playful on camera. And so that's going to be my sources of inspiration.
Amazing.
But everyone, don't tell everyone that, because that's going to be our secret for the show.
I love hearing that and knowing that you're constantly still, even to this day, evolving. Yeah.
And then even for my kids, because they're going into a different phase of their life. And one of my heroes is this guy, John Wooden, who's actually from the LA area. He's one of the greatest coaches to ever live. And so I'm kind of at a phase of my life of, adopting a little bit of his philosophy and kind of way of showing up in the way that I want to. And so, yeah, just another way for me to be playful with how I'm trying to evolve.
Awesome. Okay, finally, Todd, where can our listeners find you online?
Well, if it's social media, typically Todd_Herman is where you'd find me across the different socials. And then toddherman.me is my home base on the internet. And then all things going out to the different, programs that I have. And, I've got a software platform called UpCoach, which is, helps people who are in the coaching and training world, deliver their programming to other people. So I can get all the links there.
Amazing. We'll share all the links down below. You guys can check out more about Todd. Thank you so much for today. You are just such like a well of wisdom. And I really, sorry about Togi. I really,
just agreeing. That's all. I won the dogs over.
He loved it today. Yes. Thank you so much though.